Hey, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Happy Monday. Hope you're doing well. So, Grammy so male. Women need to step up, says Recording Academy president. Some not so not so good, not a very good look as far as that quote, as far as that comment, as a series of accusations of sexism have been thrown at the Academy in the wake of a few things, which is pretty funny considering that in the lead up to this year's Grammys, I remember this deluge of articles where it's just like, woo, yeah, this year's Grammys, they're so diverse. They're so amazing. I can't believe how diverse they are. Woo! And now it's like everybody just like gets their hopes up for the Grammys every year, and I don't know why. It's like they think like there's been so much advancement in the music industry and that like they're actually like gonna pick an amazing record that people like all love across the board. But it rarely ends up being the case. It rarely ends up being the case. It's rare that the Grammys don't end up picking for whatever category what the blandest, what the easiest to apply to the widest number of people records and artists are across the board, across categories, but whatever. Uh, so there have been some accusations of sexism thrown at the Academy in the wake of Lorde apparently not being offered a solo performance spot like many of the other performers that night, mostly male performers, which doesn't quite make sense. She's an Album of the Year nominee. Why you wouldn't want to have one of those people have a solo performance spot? Ugh. On top of that, she's easily one of the most popular performers there. And in addition, she has a very young, very millennial audience, which, I mean, you should try to have at least a little bit of something there to kind of hook those people in, give them something to keep them watching, keep them interested. To sort of throw her into a Tom Petty tribute spot doesn't quite make sense because many of the listeners in Lorde's audience probably don't even really know who Tom Petty is or don't really have any interest in who Tom Petty is. I mean, rest in peace to Tom Petty. The guy was a great musician, a great artist, a great visionary. But I mean, we're talking about kind of crossing the wires here in terms of just the amount of potential overlap between the listeners of one artist and the listeners of another. It's just kind of like a whole nother world. It's a whole nother generation. It doesn't make sense. But to move on. And then the accusations came even further once everybody looked at all the winners and saw, wow, like a vast majority of these artists, like only a very, very, very limited amount of them went to or at least the major ones anyway, went to female artists. One of the, I guess, instances of that being the Best New Artist category. And then, of course, Lorde did not win Album of the Year, and Bruno Mars won, which I feel like the anger over that is really mostly based in the fact that Bruno Mars easily had the least critically acclaimed and the least popular among hardcore music fans records in that field. I mean, I myself liked the Bruno record, but easily Lorde's record was better. Easily Kendrick Lamar's record was better. All right, now I'm going to get into the comments of the Recording Academy president because really that's kind of what we're here for. He says in response to a lot of these claims, it has to begin with women who have the creativity in their hearts and souls, who want to be musicians, who want to be engineers, producers, who want to be part of the industry at the executive level. They need to step up. I think that they would be welcome. I don't have personal experience of those kinds of brick walls that you face, but I think it's upon us as an industry to make the welcome mat very obvious, breeding opportunities for all people who want to be creative and paying it forward and creating the next generation of artists. Okay, so many things here. I feel like there's a degree of almost like this implication that the music that the women in the field of music are making isn't quite good enough, isn't really kind of like nomination worthy in a way, which is kind of a hard pill to swallow because, I mean, obviously the Lorde record using the Bruno Mars album as a standard was more interesting. was better put together in terms of flow and its themes and its conceptualities. Whereas Bruno's record, I liked it, but it just kind of felt like a compilation of, synth funk rehashes. Moving on from there, there were other artists, again, using Bruno Mars's record as like a standard here in the field of female musicians who came out with better, or at least records this year that were on par and that thematically, conceptually were more interesting. I mean, the new Kesha album, new Bjork album, SZA, for one, who of course got couched into the Best New Artist category. But I feel like he's taking these implications and couching it into this idea that, there just aren't enough women in the industry, man. It's like there's just not enough of them here. And listen, I get that probably a lot of that comes down to choice, and that it's no secret that there are more men than women on the whole in the music industry, nearly at all levels. And especially when you go into the more technical sides of the industry, there's such a rarity. There's an article over here that I have linked down there in the description box talking about some of these gaps. And specifically, I wanted to cite here the statistic of female producers who, accounting for 300 songs across a certain time period, quantifying all of these Billboard tracks, only made up 2% of again, these 300 songs that they quantified for this article. So again, incredible rarity. If you're a female engineer or producer, keep at it, because you're providing at least a bit of variety to a very homogenized section of the music industry. But I kind of digress there. The point I'm trying to make here is that, sure, while these gaps in the numbers of women present are there shouldn't have to be 50% men and 50% women for us to see at least some of these awards going to more women, at least some of these nominations going to more women, because we know and we can hear as music fans that there are women out there that are making music that is just as good, if not better, than the new Bruno Mars album, And, maybe part of that has to do with the fact that a lot of the people voting are older, they're industry types, who, of course, some bland synth funk 80s throwback with a lot of catchy hits on it is most likely going to appeal to them more than a record like Kendrick's record, more than a record like Lord's record, whose audience, again, is much younger, is much hipper, is much more diverse, and is not going to be caught in the nostalgia of the sounds that Bruno Mars was putting on his record. Certainly there are a lot of millennials out there that like Bruno Mars's record, but I feel like all of us can hear pretty plainly that Lord's album was more interesting, was more cutting edge, was more conceptual. Kendrick's record was more interesting and cutting edge and conceptual. So, and that also goes for SZA. And to a degree, I would say that also goes for Kesha as well, and many other female artists that came out this year as well, but some of which are I've given positive reviews to, but are a lot more obscure. And I know that the Grammys say, oh, well, it's not a popularity contest, it's not about sales, but at the end of the year, it's like you're not handing Grammy awards away to a lot of these very obscure artists out there. So to sort of tie up over here, what do you guys think of these comments? Do you feel like there's kind of just a lack of acknowledgement of a lot of the struggles and a lot of the walls that are being put up in front of a lot of these female musicians? Do you feel like we're just seeing the results of a meritocracy here and that's it? Or is there some kind of lack of, accolades going toward these artists and these musicians and these people in the music industry? Who actually deserve it? Because at the end of the day, I feel like there's also this implication here that, we're just not putting the welcome mat out enough. We're just not rolling out the red carpet for them. We're not holding them by the hand and saying, okay, you can come into the music industry. It's fine. It's okay. I mean, after a lot of what we've been learning throughout this whole Me Too movement and the Time's Up thing, of course, there are going to be women who are wary about getting into the music industry because they hear the rumors, they understand, they're not stupid. They get what goes on behind the scenes sometimes, and some of them don't want to subject themselves to that. And on top of that, I don't really feel like women need to be convinced to. I mean, I'm sure women, just like men, can see an artist on a stage doing something that that person's doing what they love, and they have all this adoration, and they have all these fans, and they're probably making lots of money too. I feel like women can see that just as easily as men can see that, but but according to you, they need to have the carpet rolled out for them, like in order. Oh, I can do this. I can do that. Like, I feel like women are just as aware as men are that if they want to get into the music industry and they want to try to get into the music industry, they can make that attempt. I feel like women don't need to be handed some welcome mat in order to get them to want to become an artist or become a musician. Women can pick up a guitar just as easily as a man can pick up a guitar. But those are my thoughts. Over here next to my head is another video that you guys can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Forever.